Welcome to Building with Brick, foundational wisdom on coaching, careers, and Christ. This leadership podcast was spawned by Coach Brickner's book, So You Want to Be a Coach, which is the story of a corporate executive who made a drastic career change and became a head men's basketball coach. Dr. Brickner's book is available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook on Amazon.com, or go to his website, www.drjoebrickner.com. That's DRJOE Brickner.com. Now, here's this week's podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. My guest today is Tony Garofalo, who was a trainer manager when I was at St. Benedict's, and his career took off after he left St. Benedict's, and he eventually became a trainer for the Chicago Cubs for quite many years. He's had a great, successful career, still practicing some, even though he's an old man. Tony, before the break, we were talking about Bob Bowman and what a great mentor he was for you. You might step us through what happened after you graduated from college and how you got involved with Bob Bowman, and then how all this eventually led up to your position with the Cubs.
Well, when I was a senior, I had a degree in education, but I didn't know if I really wanted to be a teacher. I really loved the athletic training. So I decided I was going to write letters to all these different organizations to see if they would hire me as an athletic trainer. So I wrote letters to the Kansas City Royals, the St. Louis Football Cardinals, the Baseball Cardinals, anybody I could think about having me on to hire as an athletic trainer. And ironically, the only one that answered me were the Cardinals, and it was Bob Bowman. And they hired me to work rookie ball in Sarasota, Florida. So I graduated May 15th, and by June 15th, I was headed down to Sarasota, Florida to work in professional baseball, which was like, wow. I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
Yeah.
And drove down to Sarasota, Florida. Didn't know where I was going to stay, didn't know anything about it. I had to report to St. Petersburg because I had to be there for like 2 or 3 weeks and then go down to Sarasota. In fact, I take that back. It was probably June 1st I had to head down there. So I was only home a couple weeks, which my wife or fiance at the time was not too happy about. I graduated, and then 2 weeks later I was headed down to Florida. And I ended up in St. Petersburg. 2 guys befriended me, a guy by the name of Mark Hill and a guy by the name of Keith Hernandez.
Oh, wow.
They said I was working with the St. Petersburg Cardinals at the time till the extended spring training started, and they invited me to stay with them. They had like this low efficiency apartment. And I stayed with them for 2 weeks. In fact, they wanted me to stay in St. Pete. They talked to the manager there and said, we really want him there, because they had no athletic trainer there at St. Pete. So they said, well, he'd do what he could. Well, I found out that they had hired somebody to come down middle of June to work for the summer in St. Pete. So I was shipped down to Sarasota, Florida. But what was good about that, in the off season, like I said earlier, Bob Bowman worked at St. Louis University. So he got me a job to work with him at St. Louis University because baseball contract only went from June until September. Okay. So from June 1st to August 31st, I was gainfully employed, and then I had nothing to do.
Oh.
So Bob Bowman hired me to work at St. Louis University. He talked to the athletic director and hired me so I could work from September until March before I went to spring training. So those 5 or 6 months I spent with him until he left for spring training at the time. to go to Florida. So I was able to work with him in the off season. So it was really, it was really exciting. I could do my baseball stuff, made a lot of friends. Not to be a name dropper, but some of the people I worked with in the minor leagues, a lot of them became, Major League Baseball players. Mm-hmm. I think the most interesting one turned out to be a professional wrestler, a guy by the name of Macho Man Randy Savage.
Oh, Randy Savage.
His name was Randy Poffo, and he was in Sarasota, Florida, and him and I lived together down in Sarasota. It was really kind of interesting. And I worked for the Cardinals. I spent 2 years in Sarasota. My managers down there were Ken Boyer and Lee Thomas. A guy by the name of Roy Matika and Bobby Dews, and a guy by the name of Julio Gotay. He was a player for the Cardinals for a few years. They were the managers I had in Sarasota. Mm-hmm. And then there was a kind of a shakeup in the Cardinal minor league system, and the AA trainer was moved to Tulsa. And after 2 years in rookie ball, they moved me to AA in Little Rock, Arkansas.
That's quite a jump.
So I spent a couple years in Little Rock. In fact, I spent 3 years in Little Rock. It was ironic when I finally got to the big leagues, a lot of the guys that I was with in the minor leagues, they came up to the Cardinals when I went to the Cubs. So we were kind of like all together. We all kind of went to the big leagues at the same time. Yeah. But it was a really learning experience in the minor leagues. And, I talked about earlier about how you have to work, to do some of the best. Well, if you can imagine, we were in Sarasota, Florida in June, July, and August. I had 2 teams, 2 Cardinal teams, 2 rookie league teams. One played in the morning, one played in the evening. And it was an unair-conditioned clubhouse.
Oh, gee.
In Sarasota, with no windows in the clubhouse. It was just a big concrete building, and we had these attic fans in there, and that was our source of fresh air. And my equipment was a 75-pound bag of ice that was delivered at 7 o'clock in the morning. And that was my equipment to work with. So again, I'd be there for the morning games, have a couple hours, be back there for the evening games, so it was like working baseball 12, 14 hours a day and having nothing but my hands in this melting ice to work with. And you had to make a go of it. And I was the only athletic trainer. Cardinals had 2 teams, and there was 2 other teams there as well. They had no athletic training. So they were always asking me, can you help with this guy? Can you help with that guy? So basically I was there all the time. Wow. So I didn't spend much time in our condo. We had a beautiful condo, which was, now you die for it, right on the Gulf Coast of Mexico at a place called the Sarasota Surf and Racket Club. We were like 200 yards from the Gulf of Mexico. Oh. But I couldn't enjoy it because I was working all the time. But you really learn what you can do and what you could put up with. There were times I was thinking, what am I doing? This is crazy. Yeah. But, I guess people noticed it because after, I got promoted, like I said, to AA, and our farm director was a guy by the name of Bob Kennedy. Okay. And he was a former major league player, coach, general manager, scout, and he was our farm director. So in 1976, I was riding to work at St. Louis University. Jan and I were living in St. Louis at the time, and I heard on the radio that Bob was named general manager of the Chicago Cubs. So I figured, what the heck is gonna, it's a phone call. So I called him and I said, hey, Bob, congratulations. I heard on the radio that you were named. Well, let me back up the truck a minute. The year before, the summer of 76, he was hired by the Seattle Mariners to be their advanced scout. Seattle Mariners were going to come into play in 1977. So Bob came through Little Rock, and, like I said, I've known Bob. We were in the minor leagues together. He was our farm director. We went to many meetings together, and he stopped in, and I said, Bob, I love my job with the Cardinals, but I'm in a no-win situation here because at the time, Gene Gieselman had been with the Cardinals for about 6 or 7 years. He was ingrained there. He was a young guy. He was only like 3 years older than I was. And I said, if anything pops up at Seattle, keep me in mind. He said, well, our first year, we're only going to have the Major League Club, AAA, and rookie ball. He said, would you be interested in joining us if I could swing it? And I said, well, yeah, So that was the end of the conversation. So when I heard on the radio that he was named general manager of the Cubs, I figured, what the heck, let me call him and just say hi to him. So I called him and I said, hey, Bob, congratulations on being named general manager of the Cubs. And just keep me in mind if anything pops up. And he said, well, you know what? I was just thinking about you today. How'd you like to come to work for me? And I said, well, yeah, and I was thinking he was saying AA, AAA. And I said, yeah, where do you want me to go? He said, I'd like you to come to Chicago. And I said, can I have about 10 seconds to think about that? And I said, well, what happened to your athletic trainer that was there? And he said, well, he's from the Seattle area. And he applied and got the job as the head athletic trainer for the Seattle Mariners. And we need somebody at the big league level. And, you're the first person that came to mind. And he said, but, I have to call the Cardinals because you're under contract with them. I have to get their permission to make it official. He said, I don't foresee it being a problem. And he said, would you want it? And I said, you better believe it. So we had just closed on a house in St. Louis, and I got the job like 10 days later.
Oh, wow.
So, he invited me up to Chicago. They had at the winter things they have up there. They had a press conference where they introduced me to the press and all that kind of stuff. And we moved into our house February 1st of 1977, and I left for spring training February 10th. So my wife was not too happy with me about that. But, it's just the friendships I made with Bob. It opened the doors for me to, to the major leagues, and at the time, I was the youngest athletic trainer in the major leagues. I was 27 years old.
That is absolutely amazing.
And, I guess because of my work ethic, some of the stuff I had to put up with in the minor leagues, Bob thought I was a good fit, and I was lucky enough for him to hire me.
It's amazing what networking can do. It's just, and people don't really appreciate that. Many, many times people will say, yeah, I'm looking for a job. And you say, well, have you tapped into your network? Well, who's my network? Just about anybody you know or worked with before or whatever. Just, talk to them. See if they know somebody who knows somebody. You just never know.
We were talking about Bob Bowman. Well, in 1976, I heard that the job at the Montreal Expos had opened. So Bowman, I told Bowman, I said, I really like to apply for this. And we talked a little bit about it. And he said, you know what? I'm not going to recommend it because I don't think you're ready for it yet. Mm-hmm. And I was disappointed. Mm-hmm. I said, okay, fine. So then I told him about the next year. I told him about the Cub job. We talked, and he said, you know what? You're ready. He said, I'll make a call for you, and you get a call from a Bob Bowman, and just, well, Bob Kennedy knew me already, but when he got the call from, I don't know if he got the call before Bob Kennedy talked to me, I don't know if he made the call before then or not, but I think he had a lot to do with me being, with the Cubs, because the phone call from him was like the seal of approval that you're ready, and And once again, I owe it to him. And he always made it a point when the Cubs came to St. Louis that we'd always say hi to each other, and I always go see him or he'd come see me. And, it was kind of like his source of pride as well, seeing another one of his students made it to the big leagues,
Yeah.
And it was because of Bob Kennedy and Bob Bowman that I was lucky enough to get to the big leagues.
What's really interesting is the huge rivalry between the Cubs and the Cardinals. It's one of the biggest rivalries in pro sports. And here you are, growing up in St. Louis, having worked in the Cardinals organization, and all at once you're now working for their biggest rival, and you're actually going to St. Louis and seeing guys that you've worked with in minor leagues who are now Major League Baseball players. What was that like?
It was like a homecoming. And what was great about it is, like, my first game at Busch Stadium, I had worked at Busch Stadium. My grandfather was an Andy Frayne usher at there. And, it was kind of like a source of pride to him, saying, that's my grandson, and my parents. But when I got to the ballpark, a lot of the players, like, I would say 95% of the Cardinal roster I had in the minor leagues. So when I got there to the big leagues, it was just like hugs and congratulations from all these former players, that we worked together and spent time together. And, when you work with a major league team, they become your family for 10 months or 9 months because you're with them every single day, either on an airplane, at the ballpark, in a city, another city. So you're become family. So these guys are like family. And guys like, I mentioned Keith Hernandez, he was there. I work with guys in the Cardinal organization, like, I'm bringing up some old names here, but
that's okay. That's okay.
Tommy Herr, Ken Oberkfell, Gary Templeton, Al Raboski, Bob Forge, Larry Herndon, Jerry Mumphrey, Eric Rasmussen, Randy Wiles, all these guys I had in the minor leagues, we came up together.
Yeah.
So it was just like old home week for me, And then it was always something that Mike Shannon and Jack Buck would always make an effort to interview me anytime the Cubs came to town, because they knew my St. Louis Cardinal connection. They knew my St. Louis connection. So they always, made it a point to come in and say hi and interview me, like pre-game show and that kind of stuff. It was just great. It was, and I didn't look at it as a rival. I mean, once the game started, yeah, they were rivals, but 5 minutes before the first pitch and 2 minutes after the last pitch, we were buddies again, and that's the way it was.
Yeah. What a great experience that is. I want to ask you, how has AT, athletic training, how has that changed over time? Because you're saying when you were in the minor leagues, your only equipment was a 75-pound bag of ice delivered at 7 a.m. Yeah. How has it changed now? Because you're a pro at it today.
It's changed by leaps and bounds. I know in the athletic training profession in general, when I first started, it was a good old boys network. You found maybe a handful of women athletic trainers. Now it's probably split 50-50. That's good. Yeah. But in regards to technology and the way they handle things, how they handle injuries and stuff like that, it's so much more far advanced, and the medicine has changed too. I mean, when I was there, we never had MRIs. It was just X-rays and the feel of what you had. That's the way it was. Now you have MRIs and CT scans and all that kind of stuff. That's helped diagnosing injuries so much better. Plus the equipment that you have in the athletic training room, Now you have ultrasound machines. You have all this weight equipment. When I first came to Major League Baseball, there was no weight rooms in Major League Baseball. That was the old school method. If you worked with weights, you got too bulky and you couldn't play baseball. Well, that's changed now. Everybody has, when I was there for my first 8 years, or I take it back, for my first 7 years, I was by myself. And I was the massage therapist, the conditioning coach, the athletic trainer. I did everything. Now, talking to the athletic trainers now, they have a staff of like 9 or 10 athletic, you have 3 or 4 athletic trainers. You have 2 physical therapists. You have massage therapists. You have 2 conditioning coaches. You have a mental skills coach. You have all these different people now that are working together. So it's making it easier for the players to get help. Before, I would have a line waiting to get in help, for me to do things, and I'd have to prioritize who I would take care of. If you were injured, you would have to wait till I got everybody onto the field, and then I would take care of the injured players, and now you can take care of them now. And the athletic training rooms have changed dramatically. A couple of years ago, we were in spring training. My wife and I were on vacation, and I went into the new Cubs athletic training facility in spring training, and their hydrotherapy room is as big as our clubhouse and athletic training room combined was.
Wow.
It was unbelievable. And, I just couldn't believe it. My first athletic training room in Chicago, I thought, I'm in the big leagues. I got it made. Well, I walked in there, and our athletic training room was down the left field corner. I don't know if you ever saw old pictures of Wrigley Field. We had to walk down the left field line to go into the clubhouse. It wasn't behind the dugout. And my first athletic training room, you had to walk up 3 steps from the clubhouse, and it was 2 tables with this ultrasound machine jammed in between the 2 tables. My desk was a piece of 3 by 3/4 inch plywood on L hooks on the wall. I had this old whirlpool in the corner, and that was my athletic training room. And I'm in the big leagues, and this is what I got, So, and it gradually got better as the years progressed. I was only in there for probably maybe a year, and then Bob was the general manager, so I told him, hey Bob, you can't function in this thing. So he moved the coaches out of the coaches' locker room, made that an athletic training room, and then I moved, but he had to go up like 10 stairs to get to this other athletic training room. So if somebody got hurt on the field, I would have to run, I'd have to run on the field, then we'd walk down the left field line, hobble up to the athletic training room. But then if I'd had the game on radio, so I'd listen. So if somebody got hurt, I'd have to sprint out of the clubhouse down the left field line to get to the field again.
Oh,
so it was crazy until 1984. Then they moved the clubhouse behind the dugout. But, it's just, that's how much athletic training is. I mean, today they wouldn't put up with that, but it's come for the better. It's so much better now, And in fact, I tell a lot of athletic trainers, I probably couldn't handle what they have now because I'm not used to that kind of stuff,
Was there any major league team that had a reputation as being a step above, having better facilities and all that type of thing, like maybe the Yankees or whatever?
Well, it's the people that had the newer clubhouses, new facilities, Cardinals, the Phillies. I mean, it's ironic. The Busch Stadium, Veterans Stadium, Fulton County Stadium in Atlanta, Riverfront Stadium, Three Rivers Stadium, if you didn't know the uniforms, you'd all think you were in the same place because all the stadiums were exactly the same.
Really?
And they all had the exact same facilities. That's when they had the multi-purpose stadiums. All those were multi-purpose stadiums.
Yeah.
So those teams always had better facilities. And people like the Red Sox and the Cubs and the Yankees that held the old stadiums, Dodger Stadium was another one. They were old stadiums and they had very small facilities, So as they start building new stadiums, then the facilities kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, I think Houston Astros was the first one that really built this ultra modern clubhouse, which is obsolete by today's standards, where they had, a lunch room, and they had a weight room, and they had a huge clubhouse facilities where the players dressed, with a players lounge, and they had a huge athletic training room. But now that's the norm.
Yeah.
The Cubs of Wrigley Field just built, five or 6 years ago when they won the World Series. They built their clubhouse. Their clubhouse is like 7,000 square feet. It's unbelievable.
Where'd they find room for that?
Well, what they did was, I don't know if you've seen pictures of Wrigley Field now, where they have that place where they have that park where people play, and then they have the building where they have the big screen TV where people could sit outside and watch it. Mm-hmm. Underneath that, they built a clubhouse.
Oh.
So what you had to do, you had to go through the dugout, and then the old clubhouse was there, which is now a batting cage. And then you had to go up steps and then underneath the concourse to get to the new clubhouse. Mm-hmm. But I've been invited down there a couple of times. I've never seen it yet. One of these days I'm going to get down there. Mm-hmm. But it's supposed to be phenomenal. I've seen pictures of it. I mean, the athletic training room is like 3,000 square feet athletic training room, which is unheard of.
The palace.
It is. It's really a palace. Considering where it's at, it's a palace.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Tony, we're going to take another short break. When we come back, I want to talk about the Professional Baseball Athletic Trainers Society, and have you tell us a little bit about that. And then I'd like to get into kind of some interesting things on who are some of your favorite players and coaches that you've worked with, and maybe even some that you struggled working with, etc.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Let's take a short break, and we'll be right back.
Okay.
Thanks.